data economy has never been more necessary. As nations develop responses to the novel virus, the greatest lament has been a lack of data. The past year have revealed a lot of things about the reliance on data and the imperative to respond. Now, the proliferation of data is a byproduct of Industry 4.0 and the confluence of emerging technologies that are still in their infancy. With current challenges of data deluge, imagine how businesses will respond when AI becomes truly ubiquitous and more sophisticated. The third wave of AI, aka perception AI or deep learning, will pull in unstructured data from eyes, ears, and a myriad of other senses for sure. And this is all about collecting data that has never been captured before. But how can data be leveraged successfully both on the developer side as well as the user side? So today with us, we have Suvig Sharma, Senior Director, Asia Pacific, MongoDB, world's leading modern and general purpose database platform. Hi Suvig, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And thank you, Priya, for having us on this podcast.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to have you on a podcast today, Suvig. So let's start with an interactive session, and we would like to know more about the company. So kindly brief us about the company, its specialization, and the services that your company offers.
Sure, Priya. And I'm hoping it's okay if I can just take a couple of minutes to set the context because that's very important to understand the value we bring to developers and organizations. I'm hoping that's fine.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, based on the interactions I've been having with a number of tech leaders and CIOs in India and in the ASEAN region, it is no longer a debate today that the success of any organization is tied to the digital transformation initiatives they're on, right? And what's also becoming clearer is the consumers and the customers' impression about organizations is also very closely tied with their experience with their softwares and application. So Priya, if right now you look at your own mobile phone, there's going to be so many different apps out there, right? And your comfort with a particular organization to transact and interact and engage with them is also influenced to a large extent by the experience you're having with that software or that application. So what that really kind of ties down to is then the success is now closely linked to how well the organizations are building their software around their most critical asset, which is the data. In so many different conversations that I've had, there's a realization that's starting to build. And it's essentially around four things. The first is, competition can come from anywhere. The biggest competition for the big production houses in Hollywood right now is not from the next big production house, but from Netflix. Zomato's market cap, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, is actually higher than the combined market cap of the 20 listed organizations in the hospitality space. And fintech companies and neobanking companies are really changing the landscape in the financial services space. So what this comes down to in today's digital economy, you cannot really buy competitive advantage off the shelf. It has to be developed and built. And the implication of that is now your developer becomes a very core player in the success of your organization. So that kind of leads to the third realization, which is in order for organizations to compete and succeed, you need to take away or remove all obstacles from the developer's plate to enable them to build applications, capabilities quicker, faster, better than their competition. And you need to be able to take away anything that's kind of putting what we call like a recurring tax on their ability to innovate. So essentially that again becomes a very key thing in how organizations think about leading and disrupting the space. And the last thing is, with so much data that you referenced, the responsibility of organization increases manifold. And they're actually now the stewards of the customer's data. So, which really means that they have to do all this innovation, cater to all the new workloads, etc. But at the same time, do it in they are also responsible for security and privacy of the customer data. And this is really where MongoDB helps, right? We are the industry's first and leading application data platform. And we're built on a document model, which is actually a superset of all data models. And what that allows us to do is it allows our developers and customers to cater to all sorts of workloads, transactional, operational, real-time analytics, mobile, full text search, all on a single platform through a single API. And what's even better is it's designed for a distributed architecture, so you get scale and resiliency out of that, and it's delivered in a platform which provides enterprise grade security across the three major public cloud, allowing people to truly deploy multi-cloud applications. So as you can see, right, through a single API, single platform, now the developer has a very lean, simple architecture to play with, and to build and innovate very, very quickly. And that's really the value we bring to our customers, and allow them to really succeed in their respective industries.
That's quite interesting, Suvik. Thank you for sharing the context first and how MongoDB plays an important role in the entire industry of data development, and of course the end usage. Having said that, I think the world is changing faster than ever and creating exponentially more data. It is leaving companies to continue experiencing uncertainty within their business. It's really important how you embrace data. So I think many manufacturers have pivoted their business approach to adapt to this evolving market, but they still somehow struggle to gain a competitive advantage. Now here the experts suggest that you should start leveraging data and make sure that you're making the maximum use of your data, and also the insights you harness from your data. So I believe data can tell us a vast amount about an organization's strengths and weaknesses. And as a business owner, I feel understanding your data could help also propel your business to success even in a very uncertain market. So
Right.
we would want to know with what mission and objectives the company was set up, and also if you can tell us about your journey since the inception of the company.
And thank you so much for that question. And first of all, I do want to say, Priya, you've really hit the nail on the head, right? In emphasizing the importance of data. And that is really, the mission of MongoDB. It's always been since our inception, and it continues to drive us even today, which is we want to make it stunningly easy for organizations to work with data. Now, that's a very simple statement, but it's also a very deep statement, right? And it's a statement that we have lived through for the last 12 years. So it's been a journey. And I'll quickly spend a couple of minutes highlighting how we have evolved and we've kept true to that mission, right? So about 12 years ago, our founders were trying to build applications and were really held back by the rigidity and the structures of the legacy databases that were prevalent. So in order to make it easier to work with data, they zeroed down on the document model. Now, the document model is a superset of all the other data models. So you can represent key values, graphs, relational, geospatial, all those different data models very easily and intuitively in a document model. But we were also very clear that we didn't want to be, just catering to like niche use cases, but really wanted to be a general purpose database, and a data platform. So with that in mind, in 2015, we acquired a company called Wired Tiger, which allowed us to which allowed us to kind of provide multi-document concurrency within the same documents. And now that was really our first step to be able to provide ACID capabilities across documents and across shards. You could always provide ACID capabilities within the same document, but this allowed us to broaden that use case. From a user perspective, what that meant is it allowed us to now fully cater to complete transactional workloads. During that course of time, we heard from our consumers, our customers, and our developers that, we don't really want to manage the database and the data infrastructure. We want to completely focus on innovation. We want to completely focus on development. And in 2016, we launched MongoDB Atlas, which is the foundation of our application data platform today. And we saw massive adoption of that. Now, what we also did is we wanted to allow customers and developers bring more and more workloads onto the same platform. So not just the operational and transactional workloads, but for what we also added was capabilities of doing full text search. Now, in today's world, almost every application has a requirement for full text search, and that was a capability that we brought within that platform. We also brought mobile capabilities to be able to handle workloads right from the edge to the backend server. We built real-time analytics capabilities and visualization tools in that same platform. What we also provided was for data tiering. So, when you're handling huge amount of data, some of those data may be like cold or warm data, and you may not want all that data to be in the highest storage tier. So the ability to offload that to a cloud object store, but yet at the same time, gain insights both from the warm, cold data and the hot data through a single federated query was again something very unique. And now last week, we also announced native time series data collection. So the whole idea was to continuously build more and more use cases, and that's how we evolved post 2016. Underlying all of this is the ability to provide true multi-cloud capabilities. So we're not talking about building one application on one cloud and another application on another cloud, but actually the ability to distribute data within the single cluster across the different three major public cloud providers. Now, that brings, again, tremendous capabilities because it allows, either to meet any compliance requirements to have data in a certain geography, or improve latency by taking the data closer to the customer. So a lot of those reasons is why we are seeing that multi-cloud today is not just a buzzword, but something that organizations are really leveraging. And then I talked about the importance of security, and we ensured we're providing all of this by providing enterprise-grade security, and we continue to innovate on that. So I just want to make sure I'm not getting too much into the weeds, but wanted to know if that's kind of a helpful overview of our journey globally. Now, and then I can get into talking about some of the, our journey within India, if that's okay with you.
Yes, definitely you can, Suvig.
Right. So I think, again, when we think about India, right, we're very, very excited about the region. And it stems for a number of different indicators. First of all, it is a very large, tech savvy region. We've got a huge number of developers and tech leaders in the country. In fact, on our MongoDB University, we have about 1.5 million registrants, and 360K out of that are from the region. So it gives us, it tells us that the excitement and adoption we are seeing in the region. Apart from the developers, even the end customers now, today, we have over 1,300 customers in India, and that's grown from last year at 88% in terms of customer count. So we're seeing that, so that's again uh, showing us very positive signs, and that's very reassuring for us. Uh, we've built a very good ecosystem here, and we've got deep relationships with all the major SIs, as well as our three public cloud partners. So again, we're very excited about that, about the momentum. I think in terms of where we are seeing real traction, we've been a lot of companies that are driving the next generation of apps, whether it is in the edtech space, gaming, fintech, logitech, health tech. We are seeing a lot of traction and a lot of adoption of a platform in that space. For example, you may have heard of Ludo King. They were the organization, is one of the leading gaming companies in the country, and they've had to deal with massive scale challenges, right? Especially when the lockdown also started. So they grew from like 150,000 simultaneous users to 1.5 million simultaneous users. I believe their total downloads is now a little over 500,000,000. And that's the kind of scale the platform was able to allow them to address very easily. Uh, Again, we've got plenty of examples in the edtech space, e-commerce, and the fintech spaces. The other interesting thing that we're seeing, and I think you mentioned it somewhere earlier, is around the adoption of AI. And we are seeing a number of startups in the country that are using AI for a variety of use cases, apart from what you would think, like in the fintech space, where there's a very natural fit for AI. It's also being used for interesting use cases like detecting fake news, for example. So the whole idea is to be able to, get insights very, very quickly from a large volume of data, and being able to drive that to meaningful results. And the other part that we're seeing, and which is really also getting us very excited, is it's not just the new age organizations. We're seeing some of the traditional large enterprises also now adopting the platform and leveraging the platform in very meaningful ways. For example, a large automobile company is leveraging our platform for IoT and connected cars use cases, to insurance companies that are using us, right from customer facing app to even parts of the policy approval processes. So this whole momentum and growth that we've seen in the digital natives, early startups, to the unicorns and unicorns, and right to the enterprises, is what is making it very exciting to see how organizations are leveraging data today in the country.
Definitely. I think thank you for guiding us about the journey of the company, and I think it was quite a journey. And yes, definitely, it's very important to leverage the power of data in today's world, where everything around us is just about data. So I think if I would want to quote as, data is equal to knowledge. So I think good data provides indisputable evidence with anecdotal evidence, assumptions, or abstract observation, which might lead to wasted resources due to taking action based on some incorrect conclusion. Now, here data allows organizations to measure the effectiveness of a given strategy. And when strategies are put into place to overcome a particular challenge or an issue, collecting data will help organizations to determine how well the solution is performing, or whether or not the approach that they have developed needs to be tweaked, or has to be changed completely over the long term. So while we're talking about this, we would want to understand from you that how data has become the key to building competitive advantage for most companies out there, and why that makes developers incredibly important.
No, and I think it's absolutely true in today's digital economy, right? Like I'd mentioned earlier in the podcast, the data is central to how you can drive competitive differentiation in your respective uh, industry, right? And that kind of brings us to the importance of the quality of the data, of timely access, and an easy way you should be able to access that data, be able to extract meaningful insights in near real time, and then being able to translate that to actionable outcomes, right? And for that, what is really, really central becomes the data and the data infrastructure. So if I just kind of step back and start from and look at it from a consumer experience perspective, and we can see now how the role of data plays in that. If you pick up any app on your phone today, what are some of your expectations out of that app, right? And I would wager that it would revolve around the following areas. First and foremost, you want that app to be very, very responsive. Now, what that means from a data standpoint is you need to be able to have access to the data very quickly, closer to the customer. So you need to meet those low latency requirements. The second piece of it is you need the data to be very relevant. So again, if you have a structure that has inconsistent data or stale data, that may not be very useful to you as a consumer of that application. Increasingly, we are seeing data being consumed in a mobile first environment. And what that means is that you want that application to be equally responsive, whether it's connected to the internet or whether it's an offline first model. You're sharing so much data with the applications on that you're using, that you want to feel safe that the data is secure, and you also have control on your own data. And then we talked about AI, ML. Essentially, your expectation today from that application is that it has to be a smart application. It has to be able to predict, personalize what you want. And for that, frameworks and methodologies like AI, ML prove to be very useful, but they're also reliant on the quality of data and how easily you're able to extract information from the underlying data infrastructure. And then you also want your expectation as a user is that that application is constantly innovating and coming up with newer and newer features and capabilities that matter to you. So all of this, as you can see, in order to meet these expectations, the more important part is really to have a data infrastructure below that allows you to cater to all these needs in a very seamless and easy and quick fashion. And that really is, how the data and the data infrastructure platform today is really central to success of organizations. And we're seeing these examples across industries, right? If you think about it, right, organizations, for example, you think in the travel space, or organizations like Uber, Ola are leveraging data in a major way. You'd look at the edtech space, and organizations like Byju's, Vedantu today are really leading the charge again by leveraging the data below to make that learning experience much better. And the list can go on and on. You can pick any industry today, and if you look at what's really driving that competitive advantage, it comes down to how those organizations are leveraging the underlying data quickly, smart, in a more smarter fashion than their competition.
Definitely. I think you very well highlighted the fact that it's not just about having data, but also having a strong data management platform that can help you leverage the power of data and also harness the insights and then drive a data driven culture in your organization. So earlier you mentioned about how the company is playing a major role in the Indian market as well. So I would also like to. This one question that I would ask is now if you consider India, India is quite data rich. I feel with
Yes,
such a huge population, I'm sure the amount of data that is generated is humongous. But
absolutely.
if you ask the right questions, we can gain qualitative insights that can help further our development agenda. But I
Hmm.
feel a lot remains wanting in the way that data is collected and currently presented. So,
Mhm.
having said that, we would want to know that how can India leverage the power of data to compete other powerful nations, and what is the role of MongoDB and how it can help India achieve that role?
Sure. Like you rightly said, there's tremendous amount of data that is generated every day and collected, and even in India, is no exception. In fact, the amount of data that we collect uh, in India is huge across industries and all, right? If you think, even starting with a number of initiatives by the government, and everyone's uh, Aadhaar information is now connected and is being used for so many different use cases in terms of eKYC and some of other applications today. When you apply for a policy, the whole approval process is now so much more simpler, whether it's insurance, general insurance, or car insurance, or what you have. And this is all being driven by really being able to assimilate a lot of data and being able to get insights out of it. And even in the private sector, not just the government, but even in the private sector, we're seeing uh, organizations really leverage that data. My take would be that, I don't really look at it from, okay, are we competing versus one nation or the other nation? What really excites me is the way Indian organizations, both startups and the large enterprises today, are leveraging data for creating better and better consumer experiences. And that is allowing us to actually compete with the best in the world. So, if I take, for example, the edtech space that we talked about, right? You look at the leaders in those space and how they have actually taken data, and used frameworks like AI to really create a better, wholesome learning experience. And what that has led to is then you get more and more learners on your platform. Eventually, you grow to such a scale. So now you need a platform that allows you and supports that scale. And eventually you're competing with the best in the world. And I think that focus we've seen multiple examples uh, across industries. When you think about gaming, the scale that organizations are operating at, is something that we couldn't think about a few years ago. And again, Indian companies are doing that because they now have access to this huge amount of data, and they're able to predict what their gamers would appreciate better, and innovate and bring those capabilities faster than ever before they could. So that again allows them to compete with the very best. You think about fintech companies, and they're solving problems for not just the traditional banking ways or lending ways, but newer and newer digital lending ways, and taking those capabilities not just to the urban population, but to the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and being able to service that market like never before. And again, that was something that was not very that was unthinkable some years ago. And they're also building applications for very niche segments, right, that were not being catered by the traditional banking and financial system. And they're able to do it today because they have access to data to quickly verify the credit ability or the credit ratings of the individual. They're able to process those loans very quickly, and it all comes down because of how they're able to leverage that data. So if you really ask me, and then the examples in the retail space around that. So I could kind of almost pick every industry that we work with in the country right now, and have examples for each one of them on how they've leveraged that data, being able to get that insights, being able to streamline their processes, make it easier for the consumers to work with, to interact and transact with them, and thereby grown at to a scale where they're competing with other world-class organizations. So it's very exciting to see all of that. And also it's exciting to see how now enterprises are doing so. So we are working with one of the top enterprises in the organization that's actually building a complete digital platform for driving consumer-centric initiatives across not just one company, but different verticals in that enterprise. So all those things is something that really excites me more, because you can see the impact of data on the lives of people, and for me that is really wonderful to see today.
Yes, definitely. I completely agree with you, Suvik. I think there's so much happening around, and data, I think, is playing a very important role. And how it can also be leveraged to make sure India as a country is also it's developing its competitive advantage, and not just organizations, but how India as a whole can leverage data and can compete with other powerful nations based on the power that data can give to us. Um, since you gave us a brief idea and a comprehensive insight on how data is useful and for developers as well, and how they can create an impact in the organization, I think developers today are looking for an environment that supports entrepreneurship. It's the ability for them to work on their own projects during work hours, and I think because of COVID-19, it is quite to some extent possible. And developers are naturally very curious, and allowing them to work on their own projects can help your company directly as well. Now, for example, WeChat, it was a product built by an early employee at Tencent who pitched the idea to his executives, and that's how we have WeChat today. But this was just one aspect that I focused on what developers need. We would like to know from you that what do you believe developers are looking for, and how does your company or MongoDB platform strives to achieve this for the developers?
Sure. And like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the developer community is something that's very close to our heart from day one. And everything that we build, including all the recent announcements that we made last week, is keeping that in mind. How do we make it easier and easier for developers to develop applications and leverage data? That's at the very core for us. If you think about from a developer's perspective, what they want to really be doing, and this is based on our interactions with the developer community, is they want to be focusing on building the next cool capability in their app, or the next cool app that can disrupt or make an impact in their respective industries. That's the focus for them. They do not want to be bogged down by undifferentiated work. They do not want to be bogged down by managing the database infrastructure that is required. So this is really something that organizations need to understand, is how do I remove all the impediments that are coming in the way of helping my developers innovate. And this is not like a one-time thing. If you don't remove those obstacles, it becomes like a recurring tax on innovation for the developers. So what I mean by that is, you could have a choice, right? So developers may want to be working on an application that caters to a variety of different workloads, because today data is coming from all sorts of sources, all different formats, all different, you need to cater to different data models out there. So if you think about it, you may have a developer working on an application that may need mobile capabilities, or that may need full text search capabilities. Now, as a developer, you could possibly pick different tech stacks for each one of those, niche tech stacks for each one of those use cases. But then that becomes an impediment, because now you have to learn the nuances of the application working with all those different pieces of technology, right? And tomorrow, when you have to scale, you again have to have those considerations, because then each part of those technologies have to scale. The other thing, what it does is, if the more pieces and the more different things that you have to contend with in that architecture, the more chances of having inconsistent data or stale data increases. So now, think about an environment where the developer needs to kind of, think about full text search, think about mobile, think about real-time analytics, think about graph connections. And then, they're kind of dealing with all these myriad of different technologies that is allowing them to address each one of those spaces. And that can be very daunting for the developers. So actually what really works for them is, how you can simplify that architecture, how you can allow them to focus on the application code without worrying of the back end. And if you can do that by leveraging the data platform underneath, that allows them to work on all these different multiple workloads through a very simple single API, and they're now not worried about the underlying stacks, and they're working with whatever programming language they're comfortable with, that makes their lives so much easier and allows them to innovate faster than before. And that is really what we're focused on doing. And if you think about some of the announcements we made last week, for example, bringing out time series collection natively in the same database where you have the enterprise data, again, is allows them to work on more workloads on the same platform. So those are the things that I believe that matter to the developers today. And as organizations, this is the team that will help drive your competitive differentiation. So it's very important to focus on enabling them to innovate faster than ever before.
Very well said, Suvig. I think developers do play a very important role, and it's that data and developers go hand in hand. So even if you have data, but if you don't have developers who are skilled enough and who can help you derive valuable insights from the data, I think there's no use of the data that you have. So I guess the role of developers is getting increasingly important in today's modern and cutting edge world, definitely. Now, in addition to so yes, we both know that how important data is, but I guess a lot of organizations are still underscoring the importance of data. And again, in addition to that, to draw up contingency plans and strategize the recovery, it has had another effect. So it's put the spotlight on business inefficient data operations, fragmented access control, and somewhat ad hoc nature of data protection as well. Now, the parlous data co issue is compounded by the fact that most businesses still haven't bought into the benefits of a solid data culture in which business decisions are made based on data. Now, for example, earlier we used to rely on a gut and instincts, or probably the industry experience a person has. But this is not to like, all this is not just to make to put a negative effect on how companies are performing today, but it is just to highlight that how data management is becoming important and is evolving as a beast. Having said that, we would want to know what challenges have you faced till date. And so I'll be combining two questions together, and that would be the challenges that you have faced, and what would you think is the future of data, and also the role of MongoDB in the future.
Sure. So I think those are two different things. So I'll kind of try to address them
Definitely.
separately,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you think about the role of data, I think we've this whole discussions that we've been having has been emphasizing that role of the data, right? So if you the way organizations leverage data can be very different, right? So the starting point is you want to leverage data to make the right business decisions. Uh, and that is, if you're not doing that, and I don't think you can really create that differentiation in your respective industry if you choose to ignore the value of the insights that the data is able to provide you, right? Importantly, the other end of that spectrum is organizations are actually leveraging data not just to improve efficiencies in certain processes or proactively, know when certain processes may, there may be a disruption and take some actions on that, but actually use that data to identify newer and newer business opportunities. So it's having a massive, massive impact, right, for organizations that are really doing this in the right manner. And for that aspect, really, there is no longer a debate on what is really driving competitive advantage for organizations. Those competitive advantage is absolutely linked to the digital transformation initiatives that you're on. And what really that boils down to is how well you can leverage your most critical asset. And that is the data that you have about your partners, your ecosystem, and your customers. There is really no, I don't think there's any debate left on that at this point in time. To your second question of what today as a leader in India that I would think is my biggest challenge. My biggest challenge would be that the rate of adoption that we're seeing in the country is very, very exciting. So I'm the whole idea of how fast we can scale as a team, and we've been growing really fast. We've been almost doubling our headcounts every year. But how fast can we scale to make sure that we're participating in as many conversations with customers, with developers, to be able to, help them drive their competitive advantage by leveraging data. That, to me, right now is our biggest challenge, and we're working very hard on that aspect.
Right. I think when we're talking about data, and specifically when you're talking about data in India, I think there are a lot of things that we need to overcome, and that I had mentioned earlier in the podcast, that how data is collected and how data is presented are some of the prime challenges that we are facing today. But I guess with over time, we are rest assured that companies like MongoDB and who are providing a strong data management platforms can help in overcoming these challenges and make sure that we have a consistent usage of data, and that can help in developing competitive advantage. So the full promise of the data economy might seem like a stuff in a science fiction today, but in time we will look back and identify certain moments that took the data economy to new heights. And I believe coronavirus can be one of them, by making us a stronger and a more informed society, stemming from the realization that we need to improve how we apply data management technologies to probably even solve such global crises. So thank you so much, Suvig. It was a pleasure having you with us today. It was quite insightful, and thank you for letting us know how a data can be leveraged, or what is the importance of data, and how developers also play a very important role in the entire data management system. So thank you so much. It was quite an insightful one, Suvig.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So for our listeners, stay tuned for a more such podcast. You can check our podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Google Podcast. And also we are coming up with more such insightful podcasts, so stay tuned. Thank you so much.